turning your back to your team, walking away from the active plays going on, walking away from the actual basketball action. Yeah, Kamila Cardoso is not a happy camper over there in Chicago, and I don't blame her. Again, this is another year of the same.
Just minutes ago, women's basketball fans were left completely stunned after a shocking on-court clash between Kamila Cardoso and Angel Reese reportedly led to a sudden and dramatic fallout. What started as intense competition quickly spiraled into something much deeper, something that insiders are now calling a complete breakdown of their relationship. Cameras caught the tension, body language told its own story, and within moments, social media exploded with one question: did Kamila Cardoso really cut ties with Angel Reese for good? Witnesses say the clash wasn't just about a single play or a heated exchange. It was the boiling point of unresolved tension that had been building for weeks, maybe even months. From subtle sideline moments to visible frustration during games, fans are now re-watching old footage and realizing the signs were there all along. The chemistry that once powered winning performances suddenly looked fractured, and this time, it happened in front of everyone. What made this moment even more shocking was what followed. According to sources close to the situation, Kamila Cardoso wasted no time distancing herself, signaling that whatever happened on the court crossed a line that couldn't be ignored. No post-game unity, no public reassurance, just silence, and in today's sports world, silence speaks louder than words. Fans immediately noticed changes in behavior, unfollows on social media, and subtle moves that suggested this wasn't just heat-of-the-moment frustration. Angel Reese, known for her confidence and intensity, now finds herself at the center of a storm. Critics are questioning her leadership, teammates are reportedly uncomfortable, and analysts are debating whether this moment could seriously damage her image and future opportunities. Is this just competitive fire being misinterpreted, or has Angel Reese finally pushed things too far? In this video, we break down exactly what happened during that heated on-court clash, what insiders are revealing behind the scenes, and why Kamila Cardoso's decision could change everything. From leaked locker room reactions to fan theories that are spreading fast, this situation is bigger than one game. It could redefine careers. Stay with us, because once you see the full timeline and the reactions pouring in, you'll understand why many fans are already saying this moment might be the beginning of the end. The moment that sparked everything didn't look extraordinary at first glance. To casual viewers, it appeared to be just another intense exchange in a high-stakes game. Physical defense, sharp words, competitive fire. But for those watching closely, especially teammates and coaches on the sideline, something felt different. The body language between Kamila Cardoso and Angel Reese told a deeper story. There was no quick nod, no acknowledgement, no attempt to reset after the play. Instead, there was visible frustration, a stare that lingered too long, and a sense that whatever had just happened wasn't going to be brushed off. In elite-level basketball, arguments happen all the time. What makes this moment stand out is that it wasn't resolved in the usual way. The game continued, but the connection between two key figures appeared broken in real time. As the minutes passed, fans began noticing subtle but telling details. During timeouts, Cardoso stood apart, listening to coaches but avoiding eye contact with Reese. On the bench, the usual energy was gone. No encouragement, no shared reactions, no visible unity. Commentators initially tried to downplay it, framing the situation as competitive emotion, but social media didn't buy it. Clips of the exchange spread rapidly, slowed down, zoomed in, and analyzed frame by frame. Viewers pointed out gestures, facial expressions, and moments that suggested deeper frustration than a single play could explain. By the time the game ended, the narrative had already shifted from heated moment to something serious just happened. What truly escalated the situation was what didn't happen after the final buzzer. There was no public reconciliation, no joint interview, no reassuring statements. In modern sports culture, especially at the collegiate and professional levels, optics matter. When teammates clash publicly, damage control usually follows quickly. This time, it didn't. Cardoso exited without engaging, Reese addressed questions carefully but noticeably avoided specifics, and the silence from both sides only fueled speculation. Within hours, fans noticed changes on social media, interactions removed, follows questioned, old posts suddenly being revisited. Whether intentional or coincidental, these details reinforced the perception that a line had been crossed. Insiders suggest that this clash wasn't about one possession or one comment, but about accumulated tension. Competitive teams often walk a fine line between passion and conflict, and when leadership styles differ, friction can build quietly. Angel Reese is known for her intensity, emotional edge, and vocal presence on the court. For many teams, that fire is an asset. But it can also become overwhelming if teammates feel overshadowed or disrespected in high-pressure moments. Kamila Cardoso, on the other hand, has built a reputation around composure, structure, and internal leadership. When those two approaches collide, especially on a national stage, the result can be explosive. The broader reaction from fans and analysts shows how quickly perception can turn. Angel Reese, once widely celebrated for her confidence and unapologetic style, suddenly found herself under intense scrutiny. Comment sections filled with debates about accountability, leadership, and whether competitive passion can cross into toxicity. Meanwhile, Cardoso was framed by many as someone who had finally had enough, choosing self-respect and professionalism over public unity. Whether that framing is fair or not, it demonstrates how powerful a single visible moment can be when amplified by today's media environment. Narratives form fast, and once they take hold, they are difficult to reverse. Coaches and team staff now face a delicate situation. Managing elite talent isn't just about tactics and performance, it's about chemistry, trust, and emotional balance. When a rift becomes public, every decision, playing time, rotations, interviews, is interpreted through that lens. Even neutral actions are seen as statements. The pressure to address the situation grows with every passing day, yet speaking too soon or too vaguely can make things worse. Behind the scenes, conversations are likely intense, careful, and focused on preventing long-term damage to both individuals and the team's goals. What makes this moment particularly significant is its timing. With careers, endorsements, and future opportunities constantly under evaluation, perception matters almost as much as performance. Scouts, sponsors, and organizations pay close attention not only to skill but to how athletes handle adversity and conflict. A public fallout, especially one framed as a breakdown in team unity, can have lasting consequences if not managed carefully. For Angel Reese, this moment represents a crossroads, a test of growth, self-awareness, and leadership under pressure. For Kamila Cardoso, it's a statement about boundaries and the standards she expects from those around her. This story is far from over. What we're seeing now is just the first wave of reaction, the immediate shock, speculation, and emotional response. The real impact will be revealed in how both players move forward, how they communicate, how they perform, and how they respond to the narrative forming around them. In the next section, we'll break down what insiders are saying about the aftermath, the locker room response, and why this clash could have ripple effects far beyond a single game. As the dust began to settle from the on-court clash, attention quickly shifted to what was happening behind closed doors. According to multiple insiders, the locker room atmosphere after the game was tense in a way teammates hadn't experienced before. Usually, even after tough losses or heated moments, there's an effort to regroup, talk things out, and re-establish unity. This time, that process reportedly stalled. Conversations were short, emotions were high, and the usual leadership voices didn't align. Several players sensed immediately that this wasn't just another disagreement that would fade by the next practice. There was a feeling that something fundamental had changed. Sources close to the team suggest that Kamila Cardoso made it clear she needed space. Not as a dramatic gesture, but as a firm boundary. In elite team environments, that kind of move carries weight. It signals that the issue isn't about ego or attention, but about respect and trust. Teammates noticed that Cardoso kept interactions strictly professional, focusing on coaches and assignments while avoiding unnecessary engagement. This behavior was interpreted by many as a sign that she felt deeply disrespected in that moment on the court, and that rebuilding trust would require more than a quick apology or public statement. Angel Reese, meanwhile, was reportedly caught in a difficult position. Known for wearing her emotions openly, she found herself under a microscope from fans, media, and even neutral observers who had never questioned her approach before. Insiders say she didn't immediately grasp how serious the fallout might become, initially viewing the clash as competitive intensity taken out of context. But as reactions grew louder and narratives hardened, the pressure increased. Every expression, every answer in interviews, every social media post was analyzed for hidden meaning. The freedom she once had to play with raw emotions suddenly felt restricted by public perception. The coaching staff now faced a critical challenge: how to manage two high-profile athletes with different leadership styles and emotional approaches without alienating either one. Coaches are trained to diffuse conflict, but when tensions become public, the margin for error narrows significantly. Addressing the situation too directly could escalate it, while ignoring it could signal a lack of control. Behind the scenes, discussions reportedly focused on accountability, communication, and the importance of maintaining standards. The message wasn't about choosing sides, but about reminding everyone that individual actions ripple across the entire team. What made the situation even more complicated was the reaction from fans and commentators.
Social media split into camps almost immediately.
Some defended Angel Reese, arguing that her intensity is part of what makes her great and that competitive sports should allow emotional expression. Others sided with Cardoso, praising her composure and framing her response as a mature stand against behavior they viewed as excessive. This polarization added fuel to the fire, turning a team issue into a broader cultural debate about leadership, emotion, and professionalism in women's sports. Once that debate took hold, it became nearly impossible for the players to control the narrative themselves. Industry observers began to weigh in, noting how moments like this can influence long-term trajectories. In modern sports, branding and image are inseparable from performance. Athletes aren't just evaluated on stats, they are assessed on how they handle pressure, conflict, and criticism. For Angel Reese, the concern among analysts wasn't about her talent, which is unquestioned, but about whether this moment would redefine how decision-makers perceive her. Fair or not, repeated public clashes can create labels, and labels can follow athletes longer than any single highlight or achievement. Kamila Cardoso's position, meanwhile, was increasingly seen as one of quiet authority. By not escalating the situation publicly, she gained support from those who value restraint and internal leadership.
However, that approach also comes with its own challenges.
Silence can be interpreted in many ways, and the longer it lasts, the more speculation fills the gap. Fans began reading into every small detail: who sat next to whom, who celebrated which plays, who spoke in team huddles. Even normal team dynamics were suddenly viewed through a lens of conflict, making it harder for any genuine resolution to happen privately. Teammates found themselves in an uncomfortable middle ground. In any close-knit squad, loyalty matters, but so does unity. Players reportedly felt the pressure of choosing how to act without appearing to take sides. Simple gestures like encouragement on the bench or interactions during warm-ups suddenly felt loaded with meaning. That kind of environment can drain focus and energy, shifting attention away from preparation and performance toward managing perceptions. Coaches understand that once this happens, on-court execution often suffers, not because of lack of skill, but because mental clarity is compromised. What's striking is how quickly the situation moved from a single moment to a defining storyline. In the span of hours, the narrative evolved from heated exchange to relationship fracture to career-impacting controversy. This speed reflects the reality of modern sports media, where viral clips and instant commentary leave little room for context or patience. For young athletes in particular, navigating that environment requires not just physical skill, but emotional intelligence and strategic communication. Every move is magnified, and mistakes are rarely given time to fade quietly. As the team prepares for what comes next, the central question remains unresolved: can trust be rebuilt, or has something permanently shifted? Conflicts don't automatically destroy teams, but unresolved ones can slowly erode chemistry. Much will depend on private conversations, willingness to listen, and the ability to separate competitive emotion from personal respect. For Angel Reese, this moment may demand reflection and adaptation without losing the edge that made her successful. For Kamila Cardoso, it may require deciding whether boundaries can coexist with reconciliation. This chapter of the story isn't about wins or losses anymore. It's about identity, leadership, and how elite athletes respond when pressure exposes cracks beneath the surface. In the next section, we'll look at how this situation could affect future games, outside opportunities, and why many believe the consequences of this clash may extend far beyond. As the days passed, the ripple effects of the clash began showing up in ways that went far beyond interviews and social media speculation. Practices reportedly felt different. The usual rhythm of drills, encouragement, and communication was disrupted by an unspoken awareness that everything was being watched more closely than ever. Coaches emphasized fundamentals and structure, but tension has a way of leaking into even the most controlled environments. Small pauses in communication, delayed reactions, and moments of hesitation hinted at a team still processing what had happened and unsure how to move forward without making the situation worse. Observers began to notice subtle changes during games as well. Plays that once flowed naturally now looked slightly forced. When chemistry is strong, teammates anticipate each other's movements without thinking. When trust is shaken, that instinctive connection weakens. Analysts pointed out moments where passes came a beat late, where spacing looked off, or where celebrations felt muted. None of this was dramatic enough to dominate headlines on its own, but collectively it painted a picture of a team carrying emotional weight. For elite athletes, even small disruptions can have outsized effects on performance. Angel Reese, in particular, appeared to be playing under a different kind of pressure. Her intensity was still there, but it seemed more controlled, almost cautious. Fans who were used to seeing her play freely began asking whether she was holding back to avoid further controversy. That internal conflict can be brutal for competitors whose success is built on emotion and confidence. Playing while constantly worrying about perception can dull instincts, turning natural reactions into calculated ones. Analysts debated whether this adjustment was temporary or a sign of a deeper shift in how she approached the game. Kamila Cardoso's role also evolved in noticeable ways. She remained composed and focused, but her leadership appeared more reserved. Rather than being outwardly expressive, she led through positioning, discipline, and execution. Some praised this as professionalism under pressure, while others wondered whether emotional distance might make it harder to reconnect fully with teammates. Leadership isn't one size fits all, and moments like this test whether different styles can coexist during adversity or if they ultimately clash beyond repair. Outside the team, the broader sports world continued to react. Former players, commentators, and analysts weighed in, often projecting their own experiences onto the situation. Some emphasized that conflict is inevitable in competitive environments and can even strengthen teams if handled correctly. Others warned that unresolved tension between star players can quietly undermine seasons, regardless of talent. The constant commentary kept the situation alive, ensuring that neither player had the luxury of moving on quietly. The business side of sports also began to loom in the background. In today's era, athletes are brands as much as competitors. Endorsements, partnerships, and public image matter deeply, especially for high-profile players. A narrative of conflict, fair or not, can influence how sponsors assess risk. For Angel Reese, whose marketability has been closely tied to her bold personality and confidence, the scrutiny raised questions about how brands perceive intensity versus controversy. For Cardoso, the narrative of composure and professionalism brought its own expectations, potentially narrowing how she's expected to behave moving forward. Teammates continued to walk a careful line.
In public, unity was emphasized.
In private, players reportedly tried to stay focused on their roles, avoiding gossip or speculation. But silence doesn't erase tension, it just pushes it beneath the surface. Younger players, in particular, may have felt caught between respecting team leaders and navigating their own comfort levels. This kind of environment can quietly affect morale, making everyday interactions feel heavier than they should. One of the most challenging aspects of situations like this is that resolution doesn't always look dramatic or immediate. There may be no public apology, no viral reconciliation moment, no clear ending. Instead, healing, if it happens, often occurs gradually through consistent behavior, mutual respect, and time.
The problem is that modern media rarely allows time.
Every game becomes a referendum, every interaction a symbol. The pressure to fix things quickly can actually slow real progress. From a competitive standpoint, the stakes remained high. Every upcoming matchup was framed through the lens of the clash. Commentators searched for signs of improvement or further strain. Fans dissected body language again, comparing it to earlier footage. This constant analysis made it difficult for either player to simply play without interpretation. When athletes feel observed rather than supported, it can affect confidence and decision-making in subtle but meaningful ways. What's often overlooked is the emotional toll of carrying a public narrative that may not fully reflect reality. Both players are human, processing frustration, pride, and responsibility in real time. The internet rarely allows for nuance, reducing complex situations into simple storylines. That disconnect can be exhausting, especially when athletes are expected to perform at peak levels while navigating intense scrutiny. Emotional fatigue doesn't always show up on stat sheets, but it can influence focus, recovery, and long-term well-being. As the season progressed, the question shifted from what happened to what does this become? Conflicts can define careers not because of the moment itself, but because of how athletes respond afterward. Growth, reflection, and adaptation can transform controversy into a turning point. But avoidance, resentment, or miscommunication can allow it to linger, quietly shaping decisions and outcomes for months or even years.
This situation now sits at that crossroads.
The initial shock has faded, replaced by ongoing evaluation. Fans, analysts, and insiders are watching for patterns rather than moments. Are adjustments leading to renewed chemistry, or is distance becoming the new normal? Are both players finding ways to coexist within the same system, or are paths slowly diverging? These answers won't come from one game or one statement, but from consistency over time. As the season moved forward, the long-term implications of that on-court clash began to take clearer shape. What once felt like a single emotional moment was now influencing decisions, conversations, and perceptions at every level surrounding the team. Coaches weren't just managing rotations and matchups anymore, they were managing narratives. Every lineup choice, every substitution, and every late-game decision was being interpreted as a message. Even when adjustments were purely tactical, fans and media read them as signs of favoritism, punishment, or silent acknowledgement of internal issues. That constant scrutiny made even routine decisions feel risky. Behind the scenes, sources suggest that internal meetings became more frequent and more deliberate. The focus shifted toward communication, accountability, and redefining expectations. Not in a dramatic, confrontational way, but in a controlled effort to prevent further damage. Coaches emphasized that success at the highest level requires emotional control as much as physical execution. While no one was singled out publicly, the message was clear. Angel Reese's response during this phase became one of the most closely watched elements of the story. Rather than retreating completely, she appeared to consciously reshape how she expressed herself on the court. The passion was still there, but it was channeled differently. Fewer confrontations, more focus on execution, and a noticeable effort to lead through performance rather than emotion.
Supporters saw this as growth.
Critics argued it looked forced. Either way, it marked a shift, and in elite sports, any visible change invites interpretation. Reese was no longer just playing opponents. She was playing against a narrative that demanded maturity and restraint. Kamila Cardoso, meanwhile, leaned even further into consistency. Her approach remained steady, professional, and disciplined. She spoke through actions rather than words, letting performance reinforce her image. This earned respect from analysts who value composure under pressure, but it also placed her in a narrow box. When athletes are praised primarily for restraint, they are often afforded less room to show vulnerability or emotion without backlash. Cardoso's silence became part of her identity, and with it came expectations that she would always be the stabilizing force, regardless of circumstances. The team's chemistry showed signs of gradual adjustment, but not necessarily full repair. Trust, once shaken, doesn't automatically return to its previous form. Instead, it often re-emerges in a more cautious version. Teammates communicated, executed plays, and supported each other publicly, but the carefree rhythm that once defined their interactions seemed muted. Wins were celebrated, losses were absorbed, yet everything felt slightly more measured. That doesn't mean dysfunction, it means adaptation. But adaptation always comes with trade-offs. Outside the program, decision-makers were paying close attention. Scouts, league executives, and brand representatives analyze moments like these carefully. They don't just ask who performed well. They ask who handled pressure, who adjusted, and who demonstrated long-term reliability. For Angel Reese, this period became a test of whether she could evolve without losing the edge that made her special. For Kamila Cardoso, it was about proving that leadership through composure could coexist with competitive fire.
Both paths carried opportunity, but also risk.
Media narratives began to soften slightly, shifting from shock to evaluation. Instead of headlines about conflict, discussions turned toward resilience, response, and growth.
That shift mattered.
It created space for nuance, even if not everyone embraced it. Fans started debating not just what happened, but what should happen. Whether reconciliation was necessary, whether separation of roles was healthier, or whether this tension could ultimately strengthen both players individually.
What became clear is that moments like this don't end cleanly. They echo.
They influence confidence, decision-making, and how athletes see themselves within a team structure. They can sharpen focus or quietly drain energy. The difference lies in how they are processed over time. This clash forced both players to confront aspects of leadership, communication, and self-awareness that talent alone never demands. As the pressure slowly stabilized, the bigger question emerged. Will this moment be remembered as a breaking point or a turning point? Careers are often defined by how athletes respond when control is challenged and narratives turn against them. The next phase of this story isn't about conflict anymore, it's about direction. The choices made after the spotlight fades often matter more than the moment that created it. In the final section, we'll look at where this situation ultimately leads, how it could shape future opportunities, redefine both players' legacies, and why some believe this clash may end up being one of the most important moments of their careers, for reasons no one expected at the time. As the season reached its later stages, the consequences of that on-court clash finally began to crystallize in ways few people anticipated at the time. What once looked like a sudden fracture between two stars slowly revealed itself as a defining crossroads, not just for Angel Reese and Kamila Cardoso, but for how both would be viewed moving forward in their careers.
By now, the noise had shifted again.
The outrage cooled, the hot takes faded, and what remained was evaluation. And in elite basketball circles, evaluation is everything. For Angel Reese, this period became about reclaiming control of her narrative. She understood something crucial that many athletes learn too late. Perception doesn't change through silence alone, it changes through consistency. Game after game, she showed up with the same intensity, but with sharper discipline. Her body language evolved. Where there was once visible frustration, there was now focus. Where emotions once spilled outward, they were redirected inward. Teammates noticed it first. Coaches noticed it next. And eventually, so did the audience. But the shift wasn't about becoming quieter or less competitive.
It was about timing.
Reese began picking her moments. When to speak, when to lead vocally, when to let effort send the message instead. That adjustment didn't erase her reputation overnight, but it complicated it in a way that worked in her favor. Analysts began saying things like, "This is a more complete version of Angel Reese," or "You can see the maturity forming in real time." Those comments mattered, especially to decision-makers who think long-term. Kamila Cardoso, on the other hand, found herself navigating a different challenge. Her composure had earned widespread praise, but it also locked her into an expectation of perfection. She was now viewed as the emotional anchor, the one who must always remain calm, collected, and unshakable. That sounds like a compliment, but it's also a burden. Any visible frustration from her, no matter how small, was scrutinized more heavily because it contradicted the image people had built around her. Still, Cardoso handled this pressure in the only way she knew how, through performance. She became even more efficient, even more reliable. Her presence on the court steadied the team during critical moments, and her consistency reinforced the idea that she was built for high-pressure environments.
Scouts and executives took note.
In meetings and reports, her name became synonymous with low risk and high trust, two phrases that carry enormous weight at the next level. Interestingly, while public narratives often frame the situation as a rivalry or fallout, the reality inside the locker room was far more complex.
There wasn't open hostility.
There wasn't dramatic reconciliation either. Instead, there was professionalism. Boundaries were understood.
Roles were clarified.
Communication became more structured, less emotional, more deliberate. In many ways, the team didn't heal by returning to what it was, it evolved into something different.
That evolution had ripple effects.
Younger players began modeling their behavior after what they saw rewarded. Emotional outbursts decreased, accountability increased. The team culture became quieter, more businesslike. Some fans missed the energy of earlier moments, but coaches appreciated the stability. In high-level basketball, chaos may draw attention, but control wins games. As the postseason approached, the stakes intensified. Every possession felt heavier. Every mistake was magnified. And yet, both Reese and Cardoso thrived under that weight in their own ways. Relentlessness became an asset rather than a liability. Cardoso's calm became a shield against pressure. Their contrasting styles, once seen as incompatible, now operated in parallel, not unified, but effective. Off the court, conversations about their futures grew louder. Draft projections, endorsement discussions, and long-term branding strategies all took this moment into account. For Reese, the narrative shifted from too emotional to learning to channel emotion. For Cardoso, it shifted from quiet contributor to foundational presence. Neither storyline was accidental. Both were shaped by how they responded when everything felt unstable. What's most ironic is that the clash that once threatened to overshadow their achievements may end up amplifying them instead. History has a way of reframing moments like this. What feels like disaster in real time often becomes context later, the pressure that forged discipline, the conflict that forced growth. Years from now, this moment may be referenced not as the beginning of a downfall, but as the moment both players truly stepped into who they would become.
Because careers aren't defined by perfection.
They are defined by response, by adaptation, by whether an athlete can take public scrutiny, internal tension, and external pressure, and still evolve. Angel Reese and Kamila Cardoso were forced into that test earlier than most. And while the process was uncomfortable, even painful at times, it revealed something important about both of them.
They didn't break.
They adjusted. And in a sport where mental resilience is just as valuable as physical skill, that adjustment may prove to be the most important win of all. Now the question isn't whether this moment ended something. It's what it started. If you made it this far, you already know this story was bigger than one moment, one game, or one headline. The real lesson here is how fast narratives can change, and how the next chapter is always written by what happens after the pressure hits. If you want to stay ahead of these stories as they unfold, make sure you subscribe right now so you don't miss what comes next. Drop a like if you believe both Angel Reese and Kamila Cardoso are just getting started, and comment below, whose side are you on? And did this clash make them stronger or divide them for good? Share this video with a friend who's been following this drama, and remember, in this game, the comeback is always louder than the controversy.